and thank you for bearing with us at the start of the meeting. So I call this meeting to order. I welcome you to the meeting of the number 24 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Government Operations and Estimates. The committee is meeting today from 4:07 till 6:07. We will hear from the Minister of Public Services and Procurement Canada as part of the committee's study on the government's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. We'd like to take this opportunity to remind all participants to this meeting that screenshots or taking photos of your screen is not permitted. To ensure an orderly meeting, I would like to outline a few rules. Interpretation in this video conference will work very much like in a regular committee meeting. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen to either floor, English, or French. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. When you are ready to speak, you can click on your microphone icon to activate your mic. When you are not speaking, your mic should be on mute. To raise a point of order during the meeting, committee members should ensure their microphone is unmuted and say point of order to get the chair's attention. In order to ensure social distancing in the committee room, if you need to speak privately with the clerk or the analyst during the meeting, please email them through the committee email address. For those people who are participating in the committee room, please note that masks are required unless seated and when physical distancing is not possible. I would now like to invite the Minister to make her opening statements.
Minister's statement.
Thank you, Minister.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Let me begin by acknowledging that I am meeting with you from the territory of many First Nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. With me today are my Deputy Minister, Bill Matthews, and others from our team. I am very pleased to be here to contribute to this committee's study on the government's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Depuis le début de la pandémie,
Since the first days of the pandemic, my department has worked around the clock to procure essential PPE and other medical supplies to protect our frontline healthcare workers.
We have been working all out to ensure that the Public Health Agency of Canada has the items of PPE it needs to distribute to frontline healthcare workers. Vu l'évolution rapide et le caractère
Given the rapidly evolving and uncertain nature of the pandemic, we proactively procured a vast range of equipment and supplies so that Canada would be prepared for any eventuality, including worst-case scenarios.
In a hyper-competitive global market to secure urgently needed equipment and supplies. We have in total procured about 2.7 billion items of PPE across a range of supplies, and 1.5 billion of those items have been delivered to date. At the same time, Canadian companies across this land answered our call and began to ramp up domestic production. Last year at this time, N95 masks were not produced in this country. Now, Medicom in Quebec is producing N95s, has produced 100 million masks to date. Medicom in Quebec is joined by 3M in Brockville that has produced 1 million N95s to date. 40% of our PPE contracts by dollar value are with Canadian companies. Having these diverse supply chains operating simultaneously was one of the key items in our strategy relating to the procurement of PPE. Despite the very best efforts of so many Canadians to follow public health advice and make so many personal sacrifices, we are in the midst of the third wave of this pandemic. Our PPE procurements prepared our supply accordingly, and we will continue to support the Public Health Agency of Canada and the provinces and territories as we make our way through to the other side of this pandemic. Nous savons que nous vaincrons.
We will overcome COVID only if we continue to follow public health advice alongside a successful vaccine rollout. When securing doses of safe and effective vaccines for Canadians, we took the same aggressive approach as in our PPE procurement. And we adopted a science-based strategy to secure as many vaccine doses as possible.
Early, negotiating aggressively to build a portfolio of the most promising vaccines to protect the health of Canadians. My department also procured supplies such as 175 million needles and 262 million syringes to administer the vaccines, as well as hundreds of freezers for use across this country. Mr. Chair, we laid the groundwork for the largest inoculation campaign in this country's history, and our portfolio of vaccine candidates is now delivering for Canadians. We originally were promised 6 million doses of vaccines before the end of Q1. We exceeded this target by 3.5 million doses and reached 9.5 million doses by the end of Q1. That is an excess of 3.5 million doses that my department and I negotiated aggressively for. Now, Canada is in the top 3 of G20 countries for the rate of vaccination, for the number of people that have had received at least one dose, and in the top 4 for total vaccines administered to date by population. 12 million doses of the Health Canada approved Pfizer, Moderna, and AstraZeneca vaccines have been delivered to provinces and territories as of today, with 8.8 million vaccines administered to date. Every day, more and more Canadians are rolling up their sleeves and getting their shot. At the same time, my department and I continue to negotiate for earlier and earlier deliveries from vaccine suppliers, and we have been successful in doing so. To be very clear, it is my role to get these vaccines to Canada as quickly as possible, and that's exactly what I'm doing. Our most recent efforts are bearing significant results. Between April and June, we will now be receiving 18 million doses of the Pfizer vaccine rather than the originally scheduled 8 million doses. Altogether, we have accelerated 22 million doses to earlier quarters. 22 million doses earlier than what was otherwise targeted. In addition, Moderna has confirmed that in addition to the shipment we received this week, we should expect just over 1.2 million doses to arrive at the end of April and more than 2.8 million doses in May. We have also negotiated for millions of AstraZeneca doses to arrive, and they will be continuing to come into this country. As a result, Mr. Chair, of these successful negotiations, by the end of September or before, we will have more than enough doses for every eligible person in Canada. In closing, the Government of Canada continues to provide information about the number of doses coming into the country which have exceeded our targets, but we are far from finished. Même si les chaînes d'approvisionnement.
So even though supply chains are stronger and vaccines are moving directly from production to shipping, so any manufacturing issues have a direct impact on delivery timelines. So to help mitigate these potential schedule disruptions, we're working very closely with suppliers and through the Public Health Agency of Canada with provinces and territories. So the information is shared in real time.
Personally pushing for even earlier delivery of vaccines every day from our suppliers. Mr. Chair, our government will keep doing whatever it takes to get Canadians through to the other side of the pandemic. And at PSPC, we will support this effort through our procurements. I look forward to taking your questions. Thank you, Megwetch. Merci.
Thank you, Minister. We'll now start questionings in the first round, and starting with Mr. Paul Hoos for 6 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Honourable Minister. Madam Minister, in Canada, we're lagging behind the United States in regard to doses per capita now. I've understood that by end of September, all Canadians should be vaccinated. That would mean everybody would have 2 doses by the end of September. Have I understood?
Oui, ça c'est correct.
That is correct. 2 doses before the end of September and 1 dose before the end of June. Considering that there are problems with AstraZeneca and a number of countries are no longer using AstraZeneca, will the quantities of Pfizer and Moderna be sufficient to arrive at the same results by end of September? Or do you need to count on AstraZeneca to achieve the goal? Thank you. That's a good question.
I use some words in English that I don't know in French, so I will switch to English here. Pfizer and Moderna are the workhorses of our portfolio. We have 44 million doses of Moderna, and we have 40 million doses of Pfizer. In total, that's 84 million doses, and that is sufficient to inoculate all Canadians who wish to be vaccinated prior to the end of September. We have a diversified portfolio of vaccines, as you know. So Pfizer and Moderna also have AstraZeneca and J&J and Novavax also supplementing our total portfolio.
Thank you.
So, if you consider that we have enough of Pfizer and Moderna that are deemed to be safe, so the deadlines will be respected, shouldn't we cancel the Johnson & Johnson contract then, given what we're going to be paying? Because we know there's a problem with Johnson & Johnson. Can we cancel the contract?
J'apprécie.
I appreciate that question.
Advice from the Public Health Agency of Canada and the Vaccine Task Force informed our procurements. Once we received their expert and scientific advice on which vaccines were beneficial for Canada, we then executed those contracts. And we will continue to execute those procurements going forward, given that Health Canada has deemed J&J safe and effective. Thank you.
Okay.
If we consider that they're not effective, would Canada be obliged to buy them, to pay for them? Because we're not going to send those vaccines abroad if they're not efficacious for Canadians.
Well, as I said, Health Canada has deemed both J&J and AstraZeneca and Pfizer and Moderna safe and effective. And as a result, we will continue with our procurements of these vaccines.
Okay.
I realize the question is whether we would continue going forward with these contracts given the information that has come out recently. But until we hear otherwise from Health Canada, our procurements are all systems go.
Merci.
Thank you. So we could already anticipate, given decisions made abroad, the United States, Europe, everywhere, that Health Canada will end up, maybe later than others, but end up canceling those contracts. But although AstraZeneca is still authorized and it's still effective for Canadians, have you undertaken any steps with the United States? Because the United States doesn't want it. They have 20 million doses warehouse. We know that with the AstraZeneca U.S. contract, they can't gift them to us, but have you started negotiating a contract, for example, like the 1.5 million we already got? Could we get more?
Nos négociations.
Our negotiations with the United States are ongoing at this time. And I do hope that we will acquire more doses from the United States. And that is the topic of our ongoing conversations. But if the United States wants to lend or loan to Canada quickly, we could accelerate vaccinations, maybe even finish before end of December and catch up on time if we could convince our U.S. colleagues, correct? All right, thanks. Another topic, Madam Minister, regarding transparency. There's a government website called Information on COVID Contracts, and it was updated the last time some 2 months ago. Why is that? Usually it would be 2 weeks at a maximum. How come it's not been updated for 2 months? I will call on my Deputy Minister to answer that question. Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. We will be updating the website in the coming weeks. An update with the most recent information. At what point in time will it be updated? I will confirm that with the committee after this meeting. Thank you. A last question, Madam Minister. For Moderna, what's the problem? It's a quality control program. What is the problem with Moderna?
Deliveries from Moderna have been delayed in the last 2 shipments by about 3 or 4 days over the weekend. So they tend to arrive on a Monday, and then they're delivered out to the
Yes,
provinces.
but what I want to know, what is
Wednesday.
what is the problem with Moderna? Why did they have some delay?
So the issue that I have been told from the supplier is with regards to the quality assurance process at the company. It is not the case that there's an issue with the quality per se, but there is a backlog of vaccines that need to be tested before they can leave the factory. So all the permits from the EU are in place. That's not the issue, but the vaccines need to go through the quality assurance testing before they leave the factory. And we want that, of course, because we need to make sure our vaccines are safe and effective for Canadians.
Thank you, Minister.
But I have pressed them for fewer delays. It's very important that we get that very tight in terms of the deliveries.
Thank you, Minister. We'll now go to Mr. Drouin for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank all of our witnesses for being here, and the Minister. I think we are seeing you on an average of once per month, I believe, at our committee, and it's great to see you again. I think I finished off almost my last meeting asking you questions.
You
guys. Thanks. We certainly appreciate you spending time with us, and Minister. I think it was just actually over 2 weeks ago, you were here on these supplementary estimates. So it's good to see you again, as I said. And I want to focus my questions on vaccine targets. We've just finished Q1, and I've been listening to what different politicians have been saying. I know there's a lot of misinformation out there. We've heard that, no Canadian would be vaccinated until 2030, to how Canada is going to be at the back of the line with regards to vaccine, or there continues to be politicians that are saying that Canada continues to be at the back of the line. So, and I know these are not accurate because we've got third-party verification like COVID-19 tracker, which I look at every day to make sure to see where we're at. And I know this is not a government body. I was just wondering if you could speak for a moment with regards to the first quarter of this year and how our vaccine procurement program progressed.
Well, thank you for the question. I will say that I have been very aggressive with the department in terms of pressing the suppliers that have approved vaccines to continue to accelerate doses. And what I mean by that is move doses up. So rather than be satisfied with 6 million doses alone coming to Canada by the end of March, I said to the department, let us broaden the negotiations, let us be aggressive with suppliers, and let us also branch out to additional sources of supply, for example, with the United States, and negotiate for delivery of doses from the US, as we saw with the 1.5 million doses coming in to Canada from AstraZeneca. I also said with regards to current suppliers, Pfizer, Moderna, for example, let's be aggressive in terms of pressing them for additional earlier deliveries. And Pfizer did come forward and give us 1.5 million additional doses earlier in the quarter. So that's the work we do every day to make sure that suppliers are being pressed into earlier and earlier deliveries. And as I said, we have moved up 22 million doses to earlier quarters because of that negotiation.
Thank you for that answer, and I certainly appreciate it. And I remember speaking to local media. They had asked me, or when are you going to raise your voice in terms of a potential vaccine shortage? And I told them, well, the contract said 6 million doses by the end of March. But obviously, we know that we have now received more than 9.5 million doses before the end of March. I'm just wondering. You could have sat back. You could have said, "Hey, they respected their timeline." But how is it that you and your department negotiate and plan to ensure that we were able to get the doses to Canadians and get more doses than expected?
Well, I will say that we work hard to make sure that our relationships with our suppliers are maintained and are strong. And that allows us to continue to press them for additional deliveries. We have ongoing discussions with them to advance the acceleration of doses. And there is a relationship issue that has to be understood in the context of these negotiations. We come to the table, we tell Pfizer, for example, exactly what it is that we would like to see. And I will say that Pfizer has been a very strong partner for Canada in terms of continuing to accelerate deliveries in a time when Canada and all Canadians would like to see more and more vaccines.
That's great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I'm probably going to be out of time soon, so I'll just keep it here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Duran. We'll go to Ms. Vignola for 6 minutes.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur.
Thank you very much, Chair. And thank you, Madam Minister, for coming back to be here with us. I'd like to begin with some numbers, the quantities ordered and the delivery dates, but not in terms of the vaccines. Rather, the ventilators, because from March 31st, some 40,547 were ordered, and we've received some 27,000, but only 2% of the ventilators are being used. My question is as follows. What will we do with these other ventilators? What will be the follow-up? These useless ventilators, or even those that have not yet arrived, what will happen to them? Do we get refunded? Do we resell them? What will happen with them? Thanks for the question. We should recall that we are now entering the third wave, and there is a need for ventilators. At this time, there's some 357 persons using ventilators just in Ontario. So it is important to keep in mind that we may well need ventilators now. So now we, have many ventilators for our frontline healthcare workers.
Make sure that we are there for the frontline healthcare workers.
Madame Anand.
Ms. Anand, I do understand we need them, but we've ordered some 40,000. Though the excess supply, because even it's some 400. I mean, there's a big gap. We've ordered 47,000. We've received 27,000. What will we do with the excess ventilators? I'm not criticizing. They are useful, but what about the excess supply? I understand, and it's a good question.
To the Public Health Agency of Canada and ISED, who put forward the number of 40,000 ventilators. And we may well have excess ventilators. And I believe discussions are ongoing with the Public Health Agency of Canada regarding the excess, if there is excess. And I'll ask my Deputy Minister to describe those discussions.
Oui, merci, Madame la Ministre.
Thank you, Madam Minister. Just to add to this, as our members indicated, it could be that we have too many ventilators, so we have several options. We can keep them for the future Perhaps we could work with other countries and determine if there are needs elsewhere. To my knowledge, there are many ventilators available around the world now, so we're not sure that there might be a need for them elsewhere. But we will certainly continue to discuss with other countries. Thank you very much. We also ordered many freezers and refrigerators. So how many of the freezers and refrigerators are being used now?
We have ordered a number of supplies, syringes, needles, gauze, and freezers, 700 freezers of different temperatures and sizes with 433 freezers already deployed. We have to remember, as I said earlier, that Pfizer and Moderna are the workhorses in our vaccine portfolio, and we need to have the supplies necessary, like freezers, to ensure that they can be administered across the country. In terms of how many are being used and whether we have access, I'll ask Bill Matthews to add his knowledge on this question.
Thank you, Minister. So not in excess, but the majority of freezers have been deployed out to provinces and territories. The Public Health Agency of Canada would be able to provide an exact answer on the numbers, but we do think things have gone quite well on the freezer front so far.
Excellent. Good news. I'm glad they're proving to be very useful. We also ordered supplies to provide more than 75 million doses of vaccine syringes, and we've received 74 million, which is excellent. But my question is as follows. Do we have a sufficient supply? Second, are we planning further orders? And 3, are we ensuring that none of these supplies become useless before their time is up?
So we had to work very quickly to procure the low dead volume syringes that are necessary to extract the maximum number of doses per vial. This was especially the case when Pfizer moved to 6 doses per vial. In very short order, the department worked quickly to procure 72.5 million low dead volume syringes, and over 30 million of those have been delivered to provinces and territories to date. And I just want to emphasize how difficult it was to do that procurement in a time when every country in the world was seeking that low dead volume syringe. Our department was able to put into place multiple contracts for the continued delivery of syringes. In terms of the question relating to expiry that you had, I will ask Bill Matthews.
Thank you, Ms. Vignola. That's the end of 6 minutes. And if the Deputy Minister can provide that information to that answer to the committee, that'd be appreciated. Thank you. Now, Mr. Green, 6 minutes.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the Minister, welcome back. I wanted to begin by asking, if I understood correctly in your opening remarks, you had suggested that the Moderna and the Pfizer make up close to 84 million doses of vaccines in the bulk of our procurement delivery. Is that correct?
That's right. 44 million of Moderna and 40 million of Pfizer.
It's clear. I know we've talked around pricing. I've seen it reported that Moderna and Pfizer are sitting on close to $23 billion in profit globally, and have actually assured their shareholders that they're going to raise the prices in the coming months. This is going to make a bad problem worse. I'm wondering, what is your strategy for price fluctuation, and are our contracts locked in at the originally negotiated price?
Thank you for the question. We have procured the 84 million doses of those 2 suppliers based on the original price that was offered. So regardless of the prices going forward, those prices that we had in our original contracts are the ones that applied to our procurements. I will ask Deputy Minister if he has anything to
That's
add.
okay. I'll accept that on the record. I know that I'm to assume in this privatized market, this commodified market of life-saving vaccines, big pharma companies like Moderna and Pfizer are ultimately making the decision on where vaccines go. We see this in the global trends, i.e. wealthy countries who have the money, by nature, they get prioritized. And I think you and I have had exchanges on prioritization in the past. I'm wondering if that continues to be the case, or is there a scenario in place based on the purchases versus option scenario that you and I exchanged quite a bit on, where if Moderna and Pfizer decide to jack up the prices, that we might expect delays on our lower cost per unit contracts in favor of a higher commodified and urgent deal somewhere else?
Well, thanks for the question. I can't speak for the companies themselves in terms of what their motivations or incentives are going to be, but I can speak to our relationships right now and the delivery schedules right now. And our deliveries are stable, they are solid, and we will continue to receive doses from both Moderna and Pfizer going forward. We expect 17.8 million doses of Pfizer before the end of June and 12.3 million doses of Moderna before the end of June. And those supply chains and relationships are very stable.
And I know, you have touted the largest portfolio in the world. We're essentially procuring probably 10 times our population in the actual need and the supply. And yet, when we try to get down to what the costs are for this, back in March, Mr. Matthews suggested that he didn't think it was appropriate that he offers up the average price at this time. When will PSPC divulge the costs per unit for the vaccine contracts?
Well, thank you. Of course, we are making all of these procurements on behalf of the Public Health Agency of Canada. And so our procurements are really in support of their efforts to make sure that Canadians have the life-saving equipment and vaccines that they need. I believe that the Treasury Board has already indicated that the total envelope of funds for vaccines is about $8 billion. In terms of the individual prices per unit, we are working with the companies in terms of what they are comfortable disclosing, but at the current time, those negotiations are ongoing. I want to be clear that I respect and believe strongly in accountability and transparency. And at the same time, I want to make sure that our relationships with our vaccine suppliers are not undermined so that Canada continue to get vaccines into this country. And those are the two items I'm balancing.
Sure, and I appreciate the delicate balance that you have before you. So acknowledging that everything goes as planned, that you are able to procure 10 times potentially what our population needs. You had stated that extra doses would be shared with the developing world. And then there was a bit of a retraction, a clarification that these are made across various departments. These decisions are made across various departments. You'll recall that I asked you about the TRIPS waiver. You made the assertion that it's not a part of the actual supply chain. I still tend to disagree, by the way. But I'm wondering, given that these vaccines have short life and need to be stored, some of them, will Canada be sharing extra doses with the developing world? And how will we select which countries are to receive these surplus vaccines?
We will share doses with the developing world. We will donate doses to the developing world, and we are having a conversation across government to determine how that process will occur.
Will Canada still receive the 2 million doses of AstraZeneca through the COVAX?
The number of doses that will be received through COVAX will be approximately 1.9 million doses of AstraZeneca. about 300,000 doses have arrived to date.
So we're still
but-
taking from COVAX while acknowledging a surplus procurement supply that you've been touting?
The contribution to COVAX is to support the efforts to ensure the developing world has access to vaccines.
Is Canada part of the
Thank you,
developing
Mr.
world?
Green. Thank you, Mr. Green. We'll now go to Ms. Harder for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Minister, you said that we're in the top 3 of the G7. I would present to you that perhaps that's because your government made the decision to delay the second dose that individuals receive to 4 months instead of 3 to 4 weeks, as is recommended. In fact, Canada's chief science advisor has said that the decision to delay second doses has amounted to, and I quote, a population level experiment. You've been warned numerous times that individuals should have their second dose within that 3 to 4 week window, and yet your government has determined that they're going to wait the 4 months. They've done so in order to create a brag point for themselves so that they can say X number of Canadians have received first dose. And of course, that number looks significantly larger than what is actually the case in terms of protection being offered to Canadians. Why is your government experimenting with the lives of Canadians?
Well, thank you so much for the question. I'd just like to offer 2 clarifications. First, I mentioned that Canada is 3rd in the G20 in terms of the percentage of people who have had at least 1 dose. Second, the decisions that you reference are not federal decisions, they're provincial decisions. We, as a federal government, are not making that decision. The provincial jurisdictions are making their own decisions about the dosing regimen. Thank you.
With all due respect, though, that recommendation is coming down from the federal government. It's not being made at the provincial levels as you're ascribing it to be made. When it comes to procuring the vaccines, as you know, there was an article that just came out by the CNN, or it was reported that we are now outpacing the United States of America in terms of people who are being diagnosed with COVID-19. The Premier of Ontario confirmed that 10,000 vaccine appointments had to be cancelled due to a lack of supply this week. I think we can all agree then that there's a bit of a problem here in terms of the procurement and then in terms of getting those vaccines down to the provinces. Are you concerned by this?
Well, to clarify, I want to suggest that this dosing regimen that you referred to prior to moving on to your next question is not a federal government decision. It is a provincial and territorial decision. Moving on to your next question, I want to clarify my role as procurement minister is to ensure doses get into this country. And as a matter of fact, I can assure you that 12 million doses have been delivered to the provinces as of today, and 8.8 million doses have been administered. There is a spread there, and that spread is hopefully going to be continued to be administered so that everyone in provinces can have access to vaccines that are currently in storage.
Minister, I can appreciate
Ms. Harder,
that.
sorry for interrupting. I apologize for just stopping you for a second. Our interpreters are having a spiking sound from your mic. Can you move your microphone up just a touch, a little bit, right about there? Let's see if that works. Thank you.
Okay.
Perfect.
Is
Sorry
that
for
better?
that.
No problem at all. Sure. So I guess my next question then here is, with the blunders in terms of procurement, I can appreciate that you're catching up. However, my concern is that, with numerous delays, it's possible then that there will be this eventual dump of an extraordinarily large number of vaccines that lands in this country, and then as a result that lands in provinces. And so I'm just wondering, are you doing anything in order to prepare for that inevitable fate?
Well, I do regret your use of the word blunder because, of course, I don't see it that way. I see Canada.
Minister. I'm just gonna clarify. Sorry, the consistent delay in vaccines coming to Canada. You're saying that's not a blunder? You're okay with that?
Could you specify what you mean by consistent delay? We've had record numbers of vaccines coming into this country, more than expected. 3.5 million more vaccines than expected in Q1. We'll have 44 million here by the end of Q2.
Contracts are
Could you
being
refer-
honored on time. The things that you've spoken of in the media, the commitments that you've made in terms of numbers that are coming, everything's gone according to plan.
There have been delays of Moderna doses by a few days, but other than that, in recent months and weeks, the deliveries have been much more stable than they were at the beginning of 2021. So that's why I regret your use of the word blunder.
So is there a need to prepare for the potential that there could be a significant number of vaccines that come all at once?
There are targets of receiving vaccines that we have made completely clear and transparent to the provinces, as I'm doing with you today. 17.8.
I know, but those targets haven't always been met, so that's why I'm asking the question.
The only instance that they haven't been met is when we've exceeded the targets. So we exceeded the Q1 targets by 3.5 million. So again, I'm not sure what you're referring
thank
to
you,
in
Ms.
terms
Harder.
of the word blunder.
That's
Thank you, Ms. Harder.
misleading.
We will now go to Mr. Weiler for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, Minister, and good afternoon, witnesses. Thank you for joining us in committee again today. And of course, we're all starved for up-to-date information on vaccines, what's going to arrive from which company, when, and where they're going to be delivered. So I'd like to pick up on where one of my colleagues left off here. And that was speaking about back in February, there were some delays in vaccines coming in. I was hoping you could speak a little bit to what the rationale for why those delays took place and how that affected the overall delivery schedule.
Well, thank you for the question. The Conservatives like to suggest that those delays were part of our contracting negotiations. In reality, Pfizer made a decision to upgrade its plant in Perth, Belgium, and as a result, we suffered a couple of weeks of delay in vaccine. But again, what happened at the end of the quarter was that Pfizer came back and provided even more vaccine than it had originally promised, 1.5 million more doses than it had originally promised for Q1 alone. And as I mentioned, we have continued to accelerate doses of Pfizer so that we will end the second quarter with 17.8 million doses of Pfizer. Those deliveries are very stable. Over 1 million doses per week arriving in April and May of Pfizer, and over 2 million doses arriving in the month of June. And we are making this information completely transparent to the provinces and territories so that they can do their planning now, just as we were making it transparent at the beginning of the year. We have no interest in keeping this information secret. In reality, the reason why we have been able to accelerate doses, or at least one of the reasons, is because we have worked cooperatively and collaboratively with the provinces, which we will continue to do. I believe strongly that this is a national effort, and I believe that we are best served if we all work together to get this done. And I would hope that would include the opposition parties as well as all people across Canada. Thank you.
Thanks for that. And going back to vaccine deliveries, you said that many times that we have the most diverse procurement portfolio of vaccines in the world. And I was hoping you could speak to why that's important in the vaccine procurement process.
To be clear, I want to reference that we are the top 4 in the G20 for overall shots administered. And I want to suggest that the purpose of having a diversified portfolio of vaccines is because at the time of contracting, of course, prior to the development and discovery of any vaccine, no one knew what the reaction and the effects of any particular vaccine would be. And we wanted to make sure that Canadians had access to multiple potential vaccines, given that lack of knowledge that existed across the world about which vaccines would be the most efficacious. And as a result of this diversified portfolio of vaccines, and despite vaccine nationalism that is taking hold in various jurisdictions around the world, Canada has been able to maintain a stable supply of vaccines. Yes, we all want more vaccines coming into this country. That's what lights my fire every single day. But suffice it to say that a diversified portfolio of vaccines has served Canada well and will continue to serve Canada well.
Thank you, Minister. And to go back to a question that came up previously, of course, we've seen a huge influx of vaccines arriving over the last few weeks. And, of course, the job of the federal government is to get it to the provincial governments. But with this extra amount of vaccine coming in, what has our government proposed to be able to aid the provinces within the matters of their jurisdiction to make sure we can get those shots into arms as quickly as possible?
Well, let's just take an example of what actually happens regarding individual vaccines. Pfizer delivers vaccines directly to the provinces. So there's no pit stop at the federal government when Pfizer vaccines are coming into this country. They are expeditious and effective about getting vaccines to the point of use. In addition, despite the couple of days of delay of the Moderna doses, those doses arrived yesterday and they are being delivered out to the provinces. They're 90% complete, for example, as of right now. So we don't hang on to any doses. As soon as they come into this country, whether it's Moderna or AstraZeneca, they are shipped right out to the provinces and territories. And Pfizer takes them directly to the provinces and territories themselves. So it is as expeditious as possible.
Thank you, Minister. We'll now go to Ms. Vignola for 2.5 minutes.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Madam Minister. We've heard of the COVAX system, and for the benefit of those who are listening and who do not know much about the COVAX system, could you remind us why it was created and for whom it was created, and why it is important for the Government of Canada to contribute to this initiative?
The COVAX facility is a pooled procurement mechanism. What that means is that it is a group of countries that have come together to ensure that vaccines can be accessible and made accessible to the developing world. There were two aspects of the COVAX facility, one for developing countries and one for developed countries. Canada is a contributor to both parts of that facility. And I will say that the number of doses that developing countries can procure from the COVAX facility is limited. Canada has a limited number of doses that it can procure, and it is most important to us as a country that we are supporting multilateralism, sharing with other countries, and providing the funding necessary to produce doses for the developing world. So we've provided over $300 million to the COVAX facility in total, and we will continue to support multilateralism in vaccine sharing. That's why our Minister of International Development, Karina Gould, is part of the governance structure of the COVAX facility. That's why we have said we will share any extra doses with the developing world, and that's why we will continue to support multilateralism in vaccine procurement.
En effet, le fait.
Indeed, the fact of assisting developing countries enhances, of course, the reputation of the Canadian government, and that it's had for centuries. We're, however, the only G7 country to have gone to retrieve a vaccine from the COVAX facility. So we've received hundreds of thousands of doses, but we're the fact that we are taking from COVAX. We're not a developing country. We are not a country in difficulty. Why are we taking COVAX vaccine when we're receiving so much vaccine directly? It undermines our reputation. Thank you for the question. I must say something here. The program is operating exactly as it's been designed. Countries like South Korea and other countries, New Zealand, have also had access to vaccine doses.
To Mr. Green for 2.5 minutes.
You'll recall last week I appealed to your humanity on the TRIPS waiver, and again, you suggested that waiving intellectual property would not actually materially impact the supply chain, and yet you talk about how developed countries are taking responsibility for producing doses for the global south. We know that AstraZeneca is manufactured in India, and we know that India is calling for a TRIPS waiver on intellectual property to be able to produce more vaccines globally. How do you reconcile the decision by your cabinet and your government to continue to draw from COVAX and the global south, acknowledging that Canada is not a developing country, while simultaneously refusing to or blocking the access to the World Health Organization's own recommendations to waive intellectual property on critical life-saving vaccines?
Well, to begin, Mr. Chair, I hope that everybody around the table understands that the COVAX facility does have two arms, and it was deliberately set up to allow developing countries to procure a limited number of doses. So the doses that we are procuring from COVAX are part of the way in which this was established. And at the same time, we are providing basically subsidies to ensure that there is manufacturing that is able to occur for doses to go to the developing world. And
would subsidies be needed? Would subsidies be needed through you, Mr. Chair, if we just allowed for the TRIPS waiver to happen and allow countries to be able to take control of their own production? Would we have to do that? Like it seems fairly dubious that we're touting our international reputation of contributing to this storage while simultaneously taking it, and then also talking about the hundreds of millions of contracts that we have upcoming on vaccines. So I'll ask again, will you, at your cabinet table, advocate for the waiver of the TRIPS, the intellectual property, to allow for countries like India and Brazil and others to produce this and increase the global supply of vaccines?
So hundreds of millions of vaccine contracts is a slight exaggeration, given that we have 7 vaccine contracts.
Johnson & Johnson, 38 million. Medicago, 76 million. Novavax, 76 million. Sanofi, 72 million. Through you, Mr. Chair, you can't go to the public bragging about how diverse your portfolio is while continuing to hoard vaccines and take from COVAX while blocking the TRIPS waivers. You can't do that. You can't have it all ways.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Thank you very much. We'll now
Am I
go
allowed to reply? Am I allowed to reply, Mr. Chair? No?
Unfortunately, Minister, we perhaps later
there
you
were
can
a number of
add that
allegations in the question.
Yeah.
It would be wonderful if I could have.
I understand, but sometimes Minister, sometimes
session.
the questioner uses up his time with his speech. So
Okay.
we will go to Mr. Macaulay.
To give the minister my time, because the Canadians deserve answers. So when my round comes back, through you, Mr. Chair, to the minister, feel free to start off where we left off.
Thank you. We'll now go to Mr. Macaulay for 5 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and great questions from my colleague from the NDP. Minister, you made a comment about the only instance that targets haven't been met is when we've exceeded targets. Now, I realize for single shots, you're claiming, we're 3rd out of 20 of the G20, but for double dose, the full dose needed, we are at around number 50. Do you consider that exceeding targets to be that far down on the global number where it really counts, which is the double vaccination?
Well, I thank you for the question. I think from a procurement perspective, what I'm focused on is getting doses here as fast as possible. And the decisions relating to whether it is a 1-dose or 2-dose regimen are not made by me, with all due respect.
I realize that, but we're not able to give the second dose because your government has failed Canadians so miserably. I want to put a bit of a human touch on this. There's a gentleman I've spoken about in the House before, a friend of mine, Fred Russell, Canadian. He was a veteran. He served almost the entire 6 years in the Second World War overseas. He landed at Dieppe, got off alive. He's one of maybe the last 10 survivors of the Dieppe raid. Got off alive, re-landed at Normandy, marched into Dieppe with Canadian troops liberated, fought through Germany and Holland. And I want to read a note that his daughter sent me. It's so sad. He's been 102. He's basically isolated. He's told me he's been so very lonely, it made me cry. 3 months in his room have cost him a fair amount of time in his life. So bad Friday, we had last rites given. This gentleman has basically given up. We've deprived him of his final moments. The gentleman has given everything to Canada because your government put its eggs in the basket with a Chinese pharmaceutical that robbed Canada of IP rights instead of doing what England did or Israel did, or apparently 50 other countries did, which was ensure an adequate supply. I don't agree that all you're bragging that we've done a great job. We're in our third lockdown in Alberta. I turn on the TV, I see stories of 25-year-olds being ventilated. Lives are being destroyed. Sitting there saying, well, we've got 1 dose, the first dose in ahead of third world countries, isn't cutting it. Do you think that that's acceptable? Do you think that's exceeding targets?
I feel very, very concerned when I hear stories such as the one that you mentioned. Of course I do. And anyone with compassion in their heart would as well. I am not bragging. I am working hard every day.
You have been bragging. You sit in the House and you sit here, oh, we're third out of the G20.
Every day to get
Being
the job
ahead
done,
of a bunch of
Mr.
poorly
McCauley.
performing countries is not
Could,
anything
could
to
I
point
answer,
of order.
Mr.
Point of
Chair?
order, Mr. Chair.
Could I actually
I can't hear
answer the
anything.
question? It's
Then
actually
stop
out of
interrupting,
order.
Francis.
It's out of order to not let the minister respond to a question. I would ask the chair to allow the minister to respond.
I would ask that both the respondent and the questioner be respectful of each other to provide the answers and the questions that they need to be done. And it is up to the questioner to recognize the time frame that they have. I do not recognize this a point of order. I do believe that the minister can stand and answer for herself. And so, Minister, if I will give the floor to you at this point in time, but asking also that the questioner respect an opportunity to answer. Thank you.
I have been very, very willing to come to this committee, and I believe that out of respect, I would ask the members if they're prepared to ask me questions, and I am fully prepared to answer them, that they would do the courtesy of actually allowing me to respond. So, may I now respond?
Minister, you've just wasted 5, 10, 15 seconds of your answer. Please answer.
I don't think it's a waste to
Please
ask
answer,
for
Minister.
a basic
Please go ahead.
respect.
Minister, please go ahead.
I am not bragging. I am simply indicating that we have a procurement strategy. We are executing that strategy, and that strategy is delivering. The decisions relating to the second dose are not made by the federal government. They are made by provinces, and that is a fact. When
Minister,
you refer,
we do not have the second dose because your government has failed to deliver it. Stop misleading Canadians. You cannot punt this on the provinces. You blame the provinces for not administering it fast enough when General Fortin himself said that's not the truth. Now you're blaming the provinces for people not getting their second dose. Your government has failed to deliver to the provinces, which is why for the needed second dose, we're at 50th. We're behind third world countries. That's the fact. You can't
12 million doses have been delivered to the provinces as of today. 8.8 million doses have been delivered. They have enough supply for 2 weeks based on current rates of inoculation. 26.8% of doses are not administered. I rest my case.
Thank you.
Let
Thank
me
you,
quote
Mr. Macaulay.
from
Thank you,
General
Ms. Macaulay. We'll now go to Mr. Johari for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Minister. And I'm sure I'm speaking on behalf of all Canadians when I say thank you very much for the hard work that you and your department is doing to making sure that that we are getting the vaccine that's needed during these difficult times. Madam Minister, in your opening remarks, you talked about a 6 million plan for end of Q1, 9.6 actually procured, and to date about 12 million and about 8.8 million administered. There is a spread of about probably about 3.2 million. But before I ask you the question, I'd like you, as I'm the last questioner before you leave, I'd like to give you the opportunity to respond to my colleague, Mr. Green. Some of the comments that he had made that you didn't have an opportunity to be able to respond. Please go ahead, Minister.
Thank you. In my response to Mr. Green, I tried to do two things. The first thing I tried to do was to explain how COVAX works, because I believe that in the representation of COVAX and in the way in which the question was framed, it made it appear as though we are taking doses that were not originally permitted under the COVAX facility. And so I'm trying to set out that the COVAX facility has two arms, one's for developed countries that Canada is utilizing and one for developing countries that Canada is supporting with over $300 million of support. We are not alone in that effort. For example, South Korea and New Zealand have also utilized that aspect of COVAX for developed countries, and we will continue to support COVAX and multilateralism in pooled procurement mechanisms. That was the first point I tried to make. The second point I wasn't able to make because I was not permitted to do so for time reasons. And the point is about the TRIPS. Canada has not blocked the TRIPS waiver. In fact, Canada has reached out to proponents of the waiver and all WTO members to better understand their concerns and is working towards consensus-based solutions. TRIPS governs IP matters, but currently vaccine accessibility issues do not pertain to patents and IP rights. Rather, they pertain to production, distribution, and supply chain concerns. So in addition to our 1.6 billion commitment to the COVID response, we are still advocating at the WTO for accelerating the production and distribution of affordable, safe, effective COVID-19 vaccines and medical supplies. We'll continue to work with all countries on concrete solutions and ensure that responses to COVID-19 do not create barriers to equitable access to vaccines. I know my colleague Minister Mary Ng is very concerned to ensure that this occurs, and I look forward to working with her as this process unfolds.
Thank you, Minister. With a couple of minutes left, I'd like to focus on Q2. Can you tell us what was the target back in February for Q2 for procurement of the vaccine?
The targets for Q2 were continuing to be negotiated. We are now going to make sure that we have more than enough vaccine to allow at least every Canadian to have one shot. And that number hopefully will continue to rise in Q2 because, as I told you, my work every day is to press suppliers for additional vaccines. What will we see at the very least? 17.8 million doses of Pfizer in Q2, 12.3 million doses of Moderna in Q2, and AstraZeneca doses coming from the Serum Institute and under our bilateral APA. It is very important to remember that we continue to press suppliers, but also jurisdictions. Our discussions with the United States, for example, are ongoing, and we do hope that we will be able to pull additional doses from that source as well.
I'm just going back to my record, I looked at and I found out that we had targeted 13.6 million by end of Q2. And based on the few numbers that you just shared with us, 17.8, 12.3, and we're in the 30 million. And when I compare 13.6 to 30 million, now we are over about 220%, the same way that we are over 160% for that. How did you manage to do that?
Well, the work that I do every day, and I would like to take my hat off to the very hardworking public servants, Deputy Minister Matthews and his team, is to ensure that we are able to accelerate doses. And as I said, we've already accelerated 22 million doses to arrive earlier in Canada. That is not bragging, that is merely stating a fact. And we will continue to accelerate doses and work collaboratively with suppliers and with all Canadians to ensure that we get doses here as soon as possible and we get them out to the provinces and territories as soon as possible. We all have the same goal, and that is to make sure that Canadians have access to vaccines as rapidly as possible, and I will not stop until that is done.
Thank you, Mr. Johari. I appreciate that, and thank you, Minister, for being here with us today. We know in our last meeting you stayed the extra 2 hours, and we appreciate that. And my understanding is that unfortunately that your time commitment is that very busy, and we want to be respectful of your time commitment, and that's why the committee wants to stay on time on our questioning to make certain that everything is cohesive and that we respect your time and your efforts to come to us. We also recognize that we will be seeing you again soon, hopefully, with the main estimates. So thank you again, Minister, for attending today.
Thank you so much, and I really appreciate the opportunity. Take care.
Thank you. We appreciate that, Minister. We will now go into our next round of questions with the officials that are here, and we will start with 6 minutes with Mr. McCauley.
All right, thanks, Mr. Chair. Mr. Matthews, I just want to follow up on the Minister's comment about resting her case, blaming it on the provinces not getting the vaccines rolled out fast enough. General Fortin says provinces doing their best, shooting down the suggestion that provinces are moving doses out of freezers and arms fast enough. Do you agree with that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of points. Number one, I don't think I would, it's fair to paint all the provinces with the same brush. Number two, I think it's a matter of them finding the sweet spot. So if there is a buffer in the freezers in case there's a delay or two, versus actually stockpiling. And do
you believe they're stockpiling?
I don't have the recent stats in terms of what province by province, but it's probably a better question to pose to health folks. But finding that you can't be operating so there's nothing in the freezer in case there's a delay or two, but exactly. You do want to find certainly enough. Keep enough in reserve for a buffer, but not a big buffer.
Let me ask you. We were chatting early in the meeting. There was talk about the low dead volume. Basically, we went from 5 shots to 6 shots per vial of the Pfizer. When we signed our contract to purchase X amount of doses from Pfizer, was that based on 5 shots per vial? And when we adjusted it to 6 shots per vial, did we go back and pay Pfizer for that extra dose that we were able to get out of the vial?
So, Mr. Chair, the contract is for a number of doses. So, number of vials doesn't actually count.
Okay,
so,
but
and the number of doses is based on the regulatory, the label that goes with the product. So, effectively,
but it was originally 5, then we went to 6. So, right?
So, we effectively started counting differently when the regulatory change was made in terms of their deliveries against the contract.
Okay. So we only paid. So the first X amount, we only paid 5. Paid for 5 per vial. Is that correct? We didn't.
We were paying for number
retroactively change it, did we?
we were paying for the number of doses extracted under the regulatory approval. And in fact, early on, in many cases, provinces were actually squeezing extra doses out of the vial.
Didn't ask my question. We were doing 5 per vial. Is that what we were paying? We're now paying 6 per vial. Did we retroactively pay for, or only what?
There's no retroactive piece here, Mr. Chair. Okay. What there is number of doses delivered. And the second the regulatory change was made, we started counting doses it's a bit differently going forward.
Okay, thanks. It's a bit hypothetical, but regarding Johnson & Johnson, I know we've approved it here, but as the Prime Minister says, science is evolving. If it turns out we copy the States and unapprove Johnson & Johnson, or perhaps do what some European countries are, or New Zealand, which is no longer accepting AstraZeneca, are we still on the hook for all of those doses we've committed to?
It's a hypothetical on all, and I can't speak to the sensitivity of the contracts, Mr. Chair, at this time.
So if Johnson & Johnson, can you confirm we'll pay for them regardless?
Normally speaking, when you're dealing with vaccines or therapeutics, the hooks in the contract relate to regulatory approval. So that's a key hurdle from a contractual perspective.
Right. So say the regulatory approval is taken away, as has happened to AstraZeneca in some countries, or Johnson & Johnson, are we still paying for them?
I can't get into the specifics, Mr. Chair, on the contracts, but I have shared that the regulatory approval is obviously a key hurdle in terms of respecting the contract. Not much more I can offer at this stage.
Let me ask you, whose decision was it to advertise on the Super Bowl $182,000 to advertise COVID awareness?
Typically, Mr. Chair, and I can't speak specifically to this one, the actual content or the advertising choice is responsible department. And then there's
PSPC.
In terms of the sponsoring department, I think, if I recall correctly, would have been health on this one because it's COVID awareness in terms of the actual content. But we can check back on that, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, if you do it, I thought it was I'm pretty sure it was PSPC or got billed to PSPC.
PSPC may have been involved in the contract itself as the executing agency, working with our agency of record. But the actual content of advertising material would land with the program holder.
Yeah. The issue with the Spartan Cube, the $150 million, are we on the hook for that, taxpayers? Are we able to get our money back considering the item doesn't work?
So on the Spartan Cube, still evolving there. And I think as the members highlighted, the company is going through some challenges with their testing. So there was an advance payment made related to Spartan to get them going, and we'll see where this goes.
Let me ask you, I've been in the business world before. I've never signed a contract that's been evolving. Like, contract is for a good received. How is the contract of the situation is evolving?
So I think, Mr. Chair,
do we, because it's a new technology, and that's fair if you just tell us, if it's a new technology, it's fronted as a grant, or like, did we buy it based on belief that it was going to work and we got sold snake oil, or?
So, Mr. Chair, a couple of points, and I think the member touched on this in his question. There was some risk taking being done in terms of new products. So this is not like buying a standard product. The reason I say evolving is we're not entirely sure of what Spartan's plans are in terms of going forward. To date, they have not, delivered any tests to the federal government. That doesn't mean they won't in the future. So that's the reason I'm saying it's evolving.
Thank you, Mr. Matthews, and thank you, Mr. McCauley. We'll now go to Mr. Kazmierczuk for 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much, Mr. Matthews. We heard today that when Pfizer delivers directly its vaccines shipments to the provinces, can you give us a sense of what the turnaround time is for Moderna in terms of when it arrives in Canada and how long it takes for those vaccines to be shipped to the provinces?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. As was mentioned, Pfizer delivers directly to the POUs that the provinces indicate. And the model with the other vaccine companies is different, where it is indeed brought in by a federally contacted service provider, FedEx and NMR. And the deliveries typically start for Moderna the day after. And depending on proximity to where they arrive, it may be a couple of days for other more remote locations, but generally speaking, they start the day after.
Okay. And then you mentioned the POUs for Pfizer. Can you just explain that to us?
So basically, provinces inform the Public Health Agency of Canada where they would like the vaccines delivered, and that's locations. And Pfizer is willing to deliver to multiple locations. So there's a process in place to inform Pfizer of where the doses are going, and they deliver directly to those locations. And it's up to each province to determine which locations.
Well, that's interesting. So if the province wanted to designate, let's say, the Windsor-Essex County Health Unit as a POU, could they do it that granularly, or are there only 1 or 2 or 3 POU locations?
I don't think, Mr. Chair, it's an infinite number, but it's certainly more than 2 or 3 that provinces can indicate. And maybe my colleague, Ms. Reza, can offer some additional context on volume of POUs in play.
I just wanted to know, if I don't mean to interrupt, I just wanted to know whether it can be sent directly to, or has been sent directly to health units, for example.
It can be. I can't speak to actual locations, but Ariane might have more context there. Ariane?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To confirm, it can go to multiple points. I think at last count is somewhere in the hundreds. So the provinces and territories add points of administration, and it can go to a granular level, as you indicated.
Okay, so just to clarify here, if we wanted to send it directly and cut out the middleman and send it directly to the Windsor-Essex County Health Unit, that is a possibility, but that is the decision of the province. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, I think that question is best placed to our health official colleagues.
Okay. Oh, that's not a problem. I just wanted to know whether it's the province's decision to state where it's going to.
Just to answer the question, Mr. Chair, the decision does rest with the province and territories.
With the provinces. Okay.
There are limits, in terms of how many, but it's more than 2 or 3, as Ariane mentioned.
Okay, perfect. That's very, very enlightening. If we can get just an update on the Medicago vaccines candidates, where are we in that process? And I know that that's probably a question for Health Canada and PHAG, but just wanted to know where we are in that process.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. Medicago is still going through trials. So, they're interesting candidate in terms of the technology, protein-based. So don't have any firm dates on, when they'll pass through the various hurdles, but they're still going through trials, and it's certainly something we're keeping an eye on.
Okay, great. But it underlines having a diverse portfolio of 7 vaccine candidates, 400 million doses. That was a smart strategy, knowing that there'd probably be bumps in the road in terms of supply, and maybe with some of the delays in terms of taking an added additional extra look at some of the vaccines before they're released. So was that a good strategy?
Diversification across a number of fronts, I would say, Mr. Chair. Number one, the various platforms. So Pfizer, Moderna have a similar platform. Then you've got Johnson & Johnson, AstraZeneca, the viral vector, and then the more traditional protein subunit, which is the Novavax, Medicago, and Sanofi candidates. So there's diversification there, which was important because it wasn't clear which vaccines would be successful early on, and some are still indeed going through the hurdles. There, I think, was also questions on the ability of industry to scale up. So even if you've got a successful vaccine, how quickly can you manufacture at scale? So there's, again, diversification important, and then location of manufacturing important as well. So getting some spread there.
How much is the province contributing to the procurement of vaccines? Just curious.
So to date, Mr. Chair, the federal government has been funding the vaccine efforts, both in terms of the vaccines, but also the supplies that go with the vaccines.
Okay, thank you for that. So locally in Windsor-Essex, we have a number of companies that have pivoted to produce PPE. I'm thinking of PAP Plastics, Harbor Technologies that makes face shields, Windsor Mold Group, for example. On the 24th of March, the minister told the committee that over 40% of PSPC's contracts for PPE by dollar value are with Canadian companies. What proportion of federal COVID-19 supply contracts are now with Canadian companies?
I'm going to have to maybe see if my colleague Mr. Mills can answer that, or offer to get back to you, Mr. Chair, but I'll see if Mr. Mills has a quick answer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We will confirm. I think it's now greater than 40%, but we will come back to the committee with a specific number, a more precise number.
Okay. And
thank you, Mr. Kuzmierczuk. I hate
thank you, Chair.
We're right at the 5 minutes.
No problem
Thank
at all. You got to do your job. Thank you.
We'll now go to Ms. Vignola, 6 minutes.
Merci.
Thank you very much, Chair. I can see that the federal government awarded a contract to FedEx Express Canada, a U.S. company doing business in Canada, to Naval Strategies. It's also a U.S. company with a branch in Montreal for vaccine distribution. We've used Amazon, UPS, FedEx, Naval Strategies. All of these are U.S. transport companies. Are there no Canadian carriers that could transport? Is there no possibility of having Canadian companies cooperate? I'm not accusing. I'm just trying to understand, why are we not using our own resources, and why are we using U.S. resources? Thank you for the question. I'd like to start by talking about the FedEx contract, which was awarded after having organized a tender. So this was a competitive process, and FedEx NMR won the tender, and the two have the capacity to service the country.
It was awarded based on a competitive process that was open to all, including Canadian companies. So they were certainly eligible to apply, and we were looking for a service provider who could serve the country with a specialization in vaccines, obviously, or medical supplies, because there are very specific transportation requirements around the vaccines.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. As we've said on numerous occasions since the pandemic started, we're very dependent on China with regard to supplies. I'm talking here about dependency on others. And I hope that we've increased the proportion of Canadian companies that supply equipment. Are you able to tell me, at the beginning of the pandemic, what was the proportion foreign countries versus Canadian companies supplying to Canada, and what is the proportion now? Thank you, Chair. As the member indicated, at the beginning of the pandemic, it was a question of obtaining goods as quickly as possible. So it was often China and other countries too.
We were certainly able, Canadian industry scaled up, so you certainly saw a greater number of contracts being awarded to Canadian companies who were often getting into new business lines. And so I think we are now, and this links to the questions from the previous member, we are now at about 40% of contracts to domestic suppliers.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. You mentioned it. We remain dependent on China, a very large industrial producer, but a producer whose ethics may well be questionable. We're thinking of the issue of human rights, the Uyghur population, but the country in general. And I'm thinking of the casino agreement that was abandoned. There was an agreement there, and it gave rise to lots of issues. Well, we could draw up a list. My question is as follows. Aside from China, there's at least 180 other countries with whom we could surely do business. Why are we not doing more business with those countries that are ethically responsible rather than China? And this is not a trap, it's just a question. Thanks for that question. Mr. Chair, yes, indeed, there are other countries, but there are certain kinds of goods that one finds made in some 3 countries.
And 3 to 4 countries were specializing in this. You have seen, as the pandemic has gone on, a broader diversification into these, in terms of where these goods are located or manufactured. You now see N95 masks being made in 2 locations in Canada, in Quebec, as well as in Ontario. You see gowns, you see face shields. But when this started, there was a heavy concentration of goods being made in China, and that was just the way the market looked. There are still a couple of goods that there's only a handful of countries that manufacture. Gloves is one I would point out, where there's only a couple of countries who manufacture gloves still.
Oui, en effet.
Indeed. PSPC published a letter on buy and sell to draw the interest of logistical companies, and the request for proposal ended on May 7th, just 3 days later. I think UPS was awarded the contract. So were they aware of this before before the tender? Because 3 days is not a very long period of time to respond. I think it's under average.
And if Mr. Matthews, you can do that very quickly. I appreciate that.
Je pense, Monsieur le Président.
I think, Chair, I will have to provide a written answer.
Mr. Green, 6 minutes.
Thank you. And I just want to begin by commending PSPC for its tilt and its pivot towards domestic procurement on critical life-saving PPEs. I know that we heard in the opening remarks that something like 44% of the dollar values were produced in Canada, which I think is important to have domestic supply chains, as the previous speaker, my friend Mrs. Vignola, pointed out. I'm wondering, what was the portion in the dollar value? Like, how much money would that represent going to Canadian firms on these 137 contracts?
I think, Mr. Chair, we'll have to do some quick math, and maybe before the end of this round, we can get back with a number.
So I'll ask ballpark? If you were just to ballpark it, take a guess.
I'm guessing somewhere around 40% of probably 600 million, but don't hold me to that. My colleagues will do some math while we
when doing that calculation, Mr. Matthews, through you, Mr. Chair, would you include the tax?
Would we include the tax? In terms of the value of the contracts?
Yeah, in terms of the overall cost of the program, would you include the sales tax if there is provincial local sales tax?
So typically what you'll see, we'll have to check, but when you see government disclosures of contracts, you'll often see the pre-tax and then tax above, because the way departments are funded, there's actually 2 separate buckets of money, one for operations and one for tax.
Mr. Chair, in the $600 million, is that $600 million pre or post-tax?
We'll have to get back, Mr. Chair. And again, don't hold me to that 600, but I understand the question, and we'll come back on and give you a number that includes pre and post tax.
I'll just put on the record, it's a question that's not going away, Mr. Matthews. I'm seeking clarity on the way that your department costs procurement and the inconsistencies in which I've had, because I've had this opportunity at public accounts now to go to public accounts and ask the Treasury Board this same question. And there's some significant inconsistencies in the way that procurement is doing its cost estimates. But I'll go on.
Mr. Chair, do you mind, Mr. Chair, if I respond to that? Because and I appreciate the nature of the question.
It was a statement, and I have 4 minutes left. So what I'll do now is go on to your statement back in July of 2020, where you had mentioned that you had secured a significant amount of PPEs and other medical equipment and supplies to support frontline healthcare workers. What's the current level of our PPEs and medical equipment that we've secured and we have for our frontline healthcare workers?
So, Mr. Chair, I think, over 2 billion items of PPE, and in terms of what's been distributed versus what's sitting in warehouses owned or operated by the federal government, in this case, the Public Health Agency, we'd have to circle back to them to get an answer. But just to give you a sense of order of magnitude, Mr. Chair, in terms of the warehouse space that is being utilized by the Public Health Agency of Canada now, we're up over 2 million square feet in terms of warehouse space versus where we were when the pandemic started, just to give you a sense of the volume.
So just to be clear through you, Mr. Chair, there's 2 million more square feet than before the pandemic started?
I believe that's the correct number.
Would you then go on the record and just in your own personal professional opinion acknowledge that it was perhaps a mistake to shutter 3 national emergency strategic stockpile facilities under the guise that we didn't need the square footage and we were going to save a couple $100,000?
I think the only thing I would offer on that front, Mr. Chair, is the pandemic has certainly required an awful lot more of joint procurement with the provinces. So more is flowing through the Public Health Agency than you would have seen in the past, and that's required an increase in the amount of space available.
Would that be more or less than we had in total prior to shuttering the 3 critical national emergency strategic stockpile facilities?
I'm not certain, Mr. Chair, because I don't know what the square footage of that particular space was.
It'd be interesting, and I look forward to finding out. Also in July, the minister announced that there was the creation of an essential services contingency reserve. Sounds a lot like a national emergency strategic stockpile, and that this was a backstop that will provide organizations with PPEs on a cost recovery basis. Is the essential services contingency reserve fully operational? And if so, when did it begin operating?
It is indeed fully operational, Mr. Chair. We'll have to get you an exact date in terms of when it became fully operational because it was gradually building up its inventory.
Do you know how many requests they've had to access it?
Mr. Chair, we can come back with requests, but I would make the point that this reserve is open to a different kind of
sure. Would you
group
talk
of
about
industries.
Perhaps which sectors would be accessing it?
Absolutely. So this is where I was going with the response, Mr. Chair, was when you think about the National Reserve, very much healthcare related, the Essential Services Reserve, energy and utilities, finance, food and water, transportation, public safety. So a broader group of
would
industry
these be
types.
Government organizations or would they be private corporations?
Private, if they, and potentially government as well, if they fell in that list of categories of industries or services that met the needs of essential services.
Would you think that PPEs are part of basic public health and safety within the context of our labor laws?
Not sure I understand the question, Mr. Chair.
Well, the question that I put to the Minister of Health is if she would consider applying the Westray law to private corporations which refused and failed through criminal negligence to provide basic critical PPEs in a time of pandemic. Now I'm understanding the government is footing the bills for these private corporations. I'm wondering if this would be covering off of a shortfall under our labor laws for basic public health and safety.
So I think the distinction there, Mr. Chair, is this Essential Services Reserve is open on a cost recovery basis to these industries. So it's not the government footing the bill.
Have there been any preliminary conversations about a government?
Thank you, Mr. Green. We'll now go to Ms. Harder for 5 minutes. Ms. Harder, can you bring your microphone down, please, so that we can hear? Thank you.
My apologies. Thank you. Sure, I'll repeat that. The Prime Minister confirmed today, and I quote, that there have been a few delays here and there, end quote. And so this is contrary to what the minister just said. She was trying to claim that we're very much ahead of schedule and everything is hunky-dory, it's all good to go. My question is, based on what the Prime Minister has said, that there have indeed been a few delays here and there, I'm wondering what your department is doing in order to make sure that we are adequately prepared should there be a large surge of the number of vaccines that are received all at once.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of points to make here. I think I would distinguish between targets and delays here and there. So targets, we very much talk about quarterly. I think when we talk about delays, we have seen delays of a few days come through with Moderna shipments, and that's certainly doesn't impact a quarterly target. But what's important for provinces here is that they have a sense of what's coming in the next 6 to 8 weeks, so they can properly plan. I think, as was mentioned, you will see increased doses delivered. Pfizer is a good example. We'll be going to 2 million a week in June. Provinces know that and they can plan for it. So it's not there won't be a giant dump of vaccines all in one day. We have to give provinces notice so they can properly plan, but all the industries here are scaling up. So you are going to see a very, steady increase in terms of doses delivered per week.
Thank you, Mr. Matthews. On March 24th, the Minister of PSPC told the committee that if Canada had extra doses, and she confirmed again today, that those doses would then be shared with the developing world. I'm just wondering what processes are being put in place or mechanisms are being put in place in order to make sure that those vaccines are adequately stored and then shipped to the countries where they need to go.
2 points here, Mr. Chair. Number one, in terms of the processes to determine where they go and when, that's more for other ministries to kind of weigh in on. But
why would that be for other ministries?
Well, PSPC is procuring and bringing them into the country, but in terms of the decisions, in terms of where they go, it's more of a global affairs, international trade type discussion.
Once they get here, though, it is PSPC that's responsible for making sure that they're properly stored. Correct?
That's part two of my response, yes, Mr. Chair. So absolutely, the contract we have in place with FedEx and Innomar, part of that contract, and indeed the reason for their expertise is the proper storage of the vaccines, because they all have unique storage requirements. So PSPC does indeed have a role there through our contractor.
Okay. Mr. Matthews, on March 24th, when you were here before the committee, you said, and I'll quote, Canada's vaccine portfolio is 7 different vaccines, and they're very different. They are across 3 different technologies, so the prices vary depending on the type of vaccine and the number of vaccine doses you buy. I don't think it's appropriate for me to offer an average price at this time. Mr. Matthews, I'm asking you again, is now an appropriate time? Would you be able to offer the average price of a vaccine?
Mr. Chair, no, I'm not in a position to do that just yet. It relates to both, current relationships with the suppliers, but also ongoing negotiations, and just don't feel it'd be appropriate for me to share that information with the risk of influencing those negotiations.
So, Mr. Chair, through you, ongoing negotiations, and yet contracts are already signed, everything is good to go. This doesn't add up for me. Why are there ongoing negotiations if we already have the world's best portfolio?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I can't predict the future here, but there's an open question on how, what the durability of vaccines are. So contracts are absolutely lined up for the current year and what I'll call round 1 of vaccines. But I think to properly plan, one has to be ready for the potential that vaccination becomes a multi-year type endeavor.
So you talked about properly planning, and I'm so glad that you did, because I'm wondering what the department is doing in terms of booster vaccinations and looking into that. I certainly know other countries are going in that direction. They're already starting their procurement process. Canada obviously was very much behind the curve in terms of our procurement of the vaccinations that we're accessing now. Are there steps being taken in order to make sure that we have access to the boosters as needed?
A couple of points, Mr. Chair, here. First and foremost, Canada was one of the first countries or early countries to get contracts in place with Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson. Experience with others was different, so I'm not sure what the basis for that is. In terms of booster procurement, we're absolutely in ongoing discussions with all of the suppliers to find out what their future plans are, whether it's a new and different vaccine or a booster to their existing vaccine. So those discussions are indeed underway.
There were conversations that were taking place with vaccine companies starting in March and April of last year. The only place that Canada went was to a Chinese-based company, and then of course that fell through the floor. And then contracts weren't actually picked up again until late summer. So it's actually misleading to say to this committee and to the general Canadian public that this was something that we were already on top of and that everything was running smoothly all summer long. It's totally inappropriate to say that.
Thank you, Ms. Harder. We'll now go to Mr. Drouin for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I've listened to a few of my colleagues who I really appreciate. And I know that when the cameras are off, they're the best in the world and they're collegial. And I just hope that in the future, when witnesses come before us, we think of one thing, and one test that I have is Mother's Day is coming. Would you talk to your mother the way that certain members are talking to our current witnesses? And the answer is probably no. And I hope that in the future we can learn that and just think about your mother. That's the test I use to ask questions and stay polite to our witnesses. That being said, Mr. Matthews, thank you for coming before our committee, along with some of the staff that is before us. I want to touch base on a question that was raised by my colleague, Mr. McCauley. Just so we are clear, the Government of Canada signed a contract for the number of doses and not the number of vials. So whether there are 10 doses in a vial or 5 doses in a vial, it doesn't matter, correct?
Absolutely correct, Mr. Chair. So it is based on the number of doses delivered, and those doses are counted based on the regulatory approval given by Health Canada. So there was a change indeed in terms of Pfizer, and that change was made on a go-forward basis only.
Thank you. And then once the PSPC is not the body that decides how many vials to extract, the Health Canada would be the decision-making body that would make that particular decision and change the label on how many extractions can be made from that particular vial, along obviously with the company.
Yes, Mr. Chair, and a little bit out of my depth here, but the company would have to apply for that type of regulatory change, and the Health Canada regulator would then take an assessment and take a decision, both in terms of yes or no, and then when the effective date would be.
Okay, and I know that in order to extract more doses per vial, we needed a special type of syringe. When did PSPC start negotiating that particular contract in order to get that those low dead volume syringes?
I will turn to my colleagues here, Ariane or Michael, in a moment, but I think those negotiations or the discussions had started in advance, but not too far in advance. And one of the things we wanted to do, just like the vaccine portfolio itself, was to get some diversification, because these syringes were obviously in high demand across the globe. So you didn't want to be reliant on just one supplier. So we now have supply coming from a number of sources. But Ariane or Michael, do you want to touch on when we started negotiations? Because I must admit, it feels like a distant memory.
It was early February where we started negotiations.
Great. Thank you. One of the accusations we often hear is Canada was dead last in terms of negotiating contracts. If I recall, and if my memory serves me correctly, none of the clinical trials when Canada signed contracts with, whether it was with Moderna or Pfizer, were yet completed. Is that correct? Or?
That's correct. They were all signed before clinical trials had wrapped up. And the contract is a product of months of discussion in some cases, and there's many steps along the way, and the process was different for each supplier, but they were indeed concluded before clinical trials had finished.
Great. Yeah, no, so I can understand that buying forks and knives is probably an easier thing to do than buying vaccines, especially not knowing whether or not those vaccines would be successful in terms of helping Canadians fight COVID-19. I want to touch base on just in terms of contract transparency, and it comes up every committee. When are we going to publish contracts? But to date, I'd like to know what your department has done to provide information about contract transparency. What has PSPC done so far?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's a number of things, but first and foremost, it's an ongoing dialogue with the vaccine providers, because it is a discussion in terms of what each party is comfortable making public, and I include the government in that. As I had mentioned earlier, we don't want anything made public that would compromise ongoing negotiations with these suppliers as well. So that we've reached out to all the companies, we've written to them, and we are now working through with them what might be appropriate to disclose, and that process is ongoing.
Mr. Duran, you have 5 seconds.
Thank you so much.
Actually, there's the bell there. Thank you. We'll go to Ms. Vignola, 2.5 minutes.
Merci beaucoup, monsieur.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm going to go with questions on follow-up systems. In January, Deloitte received a contract of $16.5 $1.something million to develop a national or enhance a national software program for vaccine follow-up. Now, these government systems, and we've repeated this ad nauseum, are outdated, but very much used. So what is the ability to support a new platform while ensuring safety data safety, sorry. Thank you for the question. I'll offer a more detailed answer in writing, but for now, we did have signed a contract with Deloitte after a competitive process.
Marianne have an update on how that project is going, but I don't have one, but I'm certainly, if my colleagues do not have one, we can get back to you with a written update.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair.
No, j'apprécierais.
Only to note that the milestones of linking to the provincial databases and systems have been met, and the progress continues, and we can work with FACT to get you a mise à jour. Merci.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. That inventory system and the follow-up of inventory, does it allow for real-time following up, or will it, depending on its state of advancement?
Monsieur le Président.
Once again, Chair, I cannot answer that question. It would be more relevant for others to answer the question. Then that's it for me. Oh, just a second. I do apologize for snapping my fingers. At this time, what number of countries find themselves in the National Reserve? I don't know. I, unfortunately, will have to get back to you after the meeting. But for the member, the question is how long you can store syringes.
Useful life, up to 5 years. So the inventory we're buying is indeed good for an extended period of time. So there's not a fear of stockpiling on that front.
Thank you. Thank you. And we'll now go to Mr. Green for 2.5 minutes.
Happy to pick up on the Deloitte contract. I'm always amazed to hear how many times Deloitte's name pops up in procurement, $16.1 million. At what point in the procurement process does PSPC hand over the carriage of the project to another department? Is it as soon as the contract is signed, or does the department still retain some responsibility to see that it's actually up and running?
I guess 2 points here, Mr. Chair. Number one, when the contract is signed, the primary relationship becomes between the successful bidder and the client department. So in this case, Deloitte would be working with the Public Health Agency and Health Canada on that assignment. Where PSPC retains a role is if there are issues with performance or potential amendments or change in scope and things like that. PSPC would have an ongoing role. So we do keep a fairly loose eye on these larger contracts, just in case there are changes.
Given that loose eye, is the National Vaccine Management Information Technology Platform up and running?
It's a milestone-based approach, Mr. Chair, where there are a number of milestones and
enhancements. Is it on
enhancements.
time and on budget, given the milestones?
I think largely on initial milestones. In early days here, still they're more or less on schedule. So we're not, it's a performing contract is the way I would describe it at this stage.
I just know that in my time on public accounts, the Auditor General brought forward a scathing report of PHAC in the way that there were systems failures on monitoring, tracking, surveilling, like the surveillance of the COVID response. And I'm wondering, is that what this is for? Is this to offset some of the failures in tracking, or like what exactly is the role of the Management Information Technology Platform?
So, Mr. Chair, the scope on this one, and my colleague Ariane can help me out a little bit as well, is around tracking information related to largely vaccine deployment and information gathering on safety.
So would it be safe to say then, prior to this procurement, the government didn't have a platform in place that was adequate?
So, Mr. Chair, on this front, I think do have to always remember that actual delivery of health services and programs is a responsibility of the provinces.
In your briefing, what problem was this solving through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Matthews? What problem was this solving for the federal government?
I think, again, that's a better question, Mr. Chair, to pose to the Public Health Agency, because this was about putting in place a national information system around vaccines. But in terms of
I guess I'll take it that prior to this, there wasn't a national platform in place, and the federal government wasn't able to track the delivery of these vaccines.
Thank you. We'll now go to Mr. Van Popta for 5 minutes.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for being here. I have a question about the AstraZeneca vaccine and how important a piece it plays in the role of getting all Canadians vaccinated. I understand that there's a commitment from the government that 36 million, I think, doses will be delivered by the end of June and 118 before the end of September. How important is the AstraZeneca vaccine in that portfolio?
Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. I think two key points here is, and the Minister already touched on this earlier, Moderna and Pfizer are certainly the workhorses or the biggest volume in terms of meeting those targets. Clearly, to the extent that AstraZeneca is rolled out, that only helps matters. But I would say in terms of meeting the targets that are out there, it's largely a story on Moderna and Pfizer.
Good, thank you. What percentage do you think will be AstraZeneca? And I ask that question in the context of people in my riding being reluctant to take the AstraZeneca vaccine because of some bad press that it has received. And the Prime Minister and the Minister of Health has said on numerous occasions, the best vaccine for you is the first one that is offered to you, which makes a nice tagline, but people don't necessarily believe that.
So I think the percentages will depend on, Mr. Chair, what the guidance is from the various provincial health authorities in terms of how they use AstraZeneca. I can't pretend to have a knowledge across the country here, but I think most are now zoning in on the age group kind of above 55 and under 65, so in that zone, so a pretty narrow age range. If that changes, obviously AstraZeneca would play a bigger role, but for the moment, I think it's very focused on that range.
I understand that. And these, of course, are the people that I'm speaking to, the ones who are being recommended for the AstraZeneca vaccine. And there's, I got to tell you, some reluctance to that. Now, I understand as well that Canada has obtained some of the AstraZeneca vaccine supply from the United States, and that they apparently feel that they now do not need that as part of their portfolio. Can you comment on that? I don't know if that is actually a true statement, but that is what I'm hearing.
So 2 points there, Mr. Chair. Number one, I can't speak to need in the U.S. for AstraZeneca. The fact is that the vaccine is not yet approved for use in the U.S. by their regulatory authority, and yet there's manufacturing taking place there. And so working with AstraZeneca, and the U.S. government, we were able to effectively get an exchange of doses because Canada has a contract with AstraZeneca to bring forward 1.5 million doses, which the U.S., we would then pony up with the U.S. at a later date when appropriate. But it was more just getting an advance on the doses owed to Canada under the contract, using the U.S. government as a go-between.
Good. I have a question about the contract that we have with AstraZeneca. Is there anything in there about liability waivers that the pharmaceutical company is saying that we will not be held liable, that shifting the liability to the government of Canada?
2 points here, Mr. Chair. Number one, won't get into specifics about what's in the contracts, but the government has announced a no-fault compensation regime related to vaccines and any health outcomes as a result. So that kind of speaks to a question of where the liability sits.
So in plain language, does that mean that the liability sits with the government of Canada, not with the pharmaceutical company?
If you've got a no-fault compensation regime in place, generally speaking, the liability would sit with the government, and that's fairly standard practice across the G7. Canada was a bit of an outlier on that front.
Sorry, could you explain that? How was Canada a bit of an outlier on that?
In terms of not having one of those regimes, most other countries do have a no-fault compensation regime around vaccines. Canada did not have one in place, but announced one in, I think it was in 2021 or late 2020, but recently announced.
Okay. I'm going to switch over to the COVAX supply source. Many Canadians that I've spoken to were surprised that Canada is receiving dosages from there. Shouldn't that be left for developing countries? That's what the common thinking is. So your comments on that, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the COVAX facility has two kind of features. One is ability to access vaccines at a subsidized rate or an efficient rate for poorer countries, but also there's a mechanism there for countries to contribute and gain access to a portfolio of vaccines. So the program was designed with that in mind, and Canada is playing on both aspects of the program.
So how much of our portfolio?
Thank you, Mr. Van Popta.
Okay.
We'll now go to Mr. Weiler for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to touch on something that was brought up in this committee, and it's been brought up at other times as well, and that's the allegation that Canada was dithering in signing contracts with some of the leading vaccine candidates. Mr. Matthews, I was hoping you could, if you're aware, if you could let this committee know how many countries had signed agreements with Moderna and Pfizer before Canada had.
Going from memory, I think Canada was in the top 3 with both, but I'm check. I'd have to go back and check. But we were at the table very quickly with both Moderna and Pfizer. I think the countries where the vaccine is actually manufactured, obviously, were at the table as well around a similar timeline, but second or third. And we had started negotiations with those companies back in early last year in May, June type timeframe.
Thank you for that. I want to touch on some of the questions on PPE as well. And I was hoping you could let us know what share of our spending on PPE has gone towards domestic PPE overall as part of our procurement.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And we touched on this earlier, and my mental math was very bad. I apologize. So roughly of the $9.5 billion or so on PPE, about 4.3 billion or 40% is domestic. So I believe it was Mr. Green, Mr. Chair, who had asked that question. So I think I cautioned him about the inaccuracy of my $600 million estimate. So my caution was appropriate. And sorry, the disclosures around those contracts do include HST in the dollar amount, which I believe was another question that Mr. Green had asked.
Well, thank you for clarifying that. And I know as part of, I know there were some measures during the pandemic to also provide procurement opportunities to Indigenous-owned businesses to provide PPE. And I was hoping you could give us some more information about how that went.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It went forward a couple of different avenues. Number one, there was some contracts that were awarded directly to Indigenous businesses, thermometers, and come to mind as one example. And then we also did some competitions that were only open to Indigenous businesses, one in particular, or two in particular, around masks. So we had a very successful procurement that was around masks that was only open to Indigenous-owned businesses and resulted in contracts as well.
Great. And how is PSPC connecting with Indigenous-owned businesses? Are there ways where it's proactively seeking out the type of businesses that could offer this type of service to help them with retooling to be able to do that? Or how would these businesses find out about these type of procurement opportunities?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think two obvious points to make here. Number one is just through information on PSPC's website that is open to any organization. So that's there. But specifically targeting underrepresented groups, we do have an Office of Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises that places particular emphasis on groups such as Indigenous companies to help them understand, A, the opportunities, but B, the government procurement process, and to help them kind of navigate the process to increase their chances of success.
Thank you.
And I should have added, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, that OSME group does also reach out directly to trade associations, business groups, et cetera, to have better access to those those types of organizations.
Thank you for that. And do we have a sense of overall how much of that PPE procurement ended up going to Indigenous-owned businesses? And I ask this because I know there has been an overall target for PSPC to provide or to meet a 5% threshold for federal contracts going to Indigenous-owned businesses.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm going to let my colleagues correct me if my numbers are outdated, but I have about between 30 and 35 contracts to Indigenous companies related to the COVID response in value of somewhere around $120 million. But before we take that as official, Mr. Mills or Ariane, do you want to correct that?
I'll say that's correct.
That's correct. Okay. Oh, Mr. Vandergrift, thank you.
Thank you. Maybe last question because my time's running out here. Getting back to COVAX, on a per capita basis, how much, or relative to other countries around the world, how much is Canada's per capita level of investment in COVAX relative to other countries?
Canada is one of the leading contributors in terms of financial contributions to the COVAX facility, so we're right up there. We could probably come back, if it's helpful, Mr. Chair, with an exact ranking if there's one available, but I know we were one of the leading countries.
Thank you, Mr. Matthews. Thank you, Mr. Weiler, and thank you everybody for today. We started at 4:07 by the clock on my computer, and it is 6:07 at this point in time. So thank you. We were right on time, and appreciate that. Mr. Matthews, thank you, to Ms. Reza, to Mr. Mills and Mr. Vandergrift for staying with us through this time, and appreciate your answers. And you did indicate that you might have one or two further responses that you could provide to us, and would appreciate if you would forward that to our clerk as soon as you can. It'd be greatly appreciated.
Will do, Mr. Chair. Can I take 10 seconds just on, there was an early question around the update of our website, and there's two aspects to that. One is on vaccines, which was updated April 9th. The other was on PPE, which had not been updated for some time. That update is quarterly, not monthly. And so the next update for the website for PPE will be towards the end of May. And I believe that was a question that was asked early on in this meeting.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the clarification. I'd like to thank the technicians and the interpreters and the clerk and everybody here for the great work they've done to get this through today. We're in the same room we were in on Monday, and we did not have any glitches in delays, and so I appreciate everyone for being here and doing that. With that said, I now declare the meeting adjourned.
You're the real.